Yep.
Welcome to MMA Fan. My name is Luke Mason, and I am honored to have a friend of mine, a former Waynesburg University wrestler, Ken Burrs, on the show. Ken, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
It's great having you on the show. I've known you for a few years. Back when you were wrestling at Waynesburg University, I got to know you then. You have since joined the ranks as an MMA fighter, an unbeaten amateur MMA fighter, having debuted very impressively and gotten a win. And you're training at Indio Dojo. You're really making a push as an MMA fighter. So let's first talk, because you have a big fight coming up, and we want to talk about that. Brawl the Bird 16 247 Fighting Championships at the Meadows Casino at the racetracks coming up April 15th. But let's go back in time. What was it like having your amateur debut fight? I know you've been a wrestler for a long time. So what was it like transitioning to MMA?
I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, it was nice to actually finally get a fight because I think I started training probably not too long after I left Waynesburg back in 2019. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and so it was just like kind of a long road of trying to find fights and get everything situated. But it's nice that I finally got a fight for, I had that fight in October, that debut, and now I have one for April. So it's nice that the ball started rolling because, I mean, all the training I've done, I mean, I've pretty much been like, since I've started, it's pretty much just been fight camps all the time, but no, not many fights have happened. It's been a lot of like, you know, just a lot of stuff, like, nothing's promised.
Mhm.
So,
Particularly in the amateur ranks, I saw on Topology that you had at least one fight officially be matched and then fall through, but that happens quite a bit, particularly amateurs. I believe, if I'm right, you were a two-time national qualifier at Waynesburg University. Is that right? Did you go to nationals qualification twice?
yes.
And,
Yeah.
and so what was that experience like? And did any of that pressure and sort of intensity of wrestling at that high collegiate level of the national tournament for Division III, did that translate at all to fighting in a cage? Was it more stress, less stress? What was that kind of big level wrestling experience like when you put it into the cage?
I mean, I think me personally, in that type of competition, I kind of do better just because I know what's at stake. Because I know the level of competition and I know I have to be on my game. So, I mean, that's kind of what, drives me to be better. So that's why I'm kind of actually like this fight I have coming up. I'm actually, real motivated about it because it's, he's a D1 wrestler. He wrestles at Pitt. And like, I have something to actually work towards. And I don't really like, I don't want an easy fight. I just want to like, go against like, the best people. That's why I train. I train for where I want to be, not for where I'm at.
Well, that's an incredible, healthy mindset to have for anybody out there who's training. You're absolutely right. It can be tough to stay motivated and hungry and want to push yourself if your challenger isn't high level. And you were saying at Division III wrestling, when you get into the national level, everybody's good. You bring up your opponent for April 15th. This is an incredible middleweight matchup for people that like high level amateur MMA, but I would say even just good MMA, because James Lledo, your opponent, is a current starter at Pitt University D1. Let's just first talk about that. You mentioned that you're excited and motivated because this is a big challenge, which it is. Where do you think we'll find out April 15th? Buy your tickets now, but 247fighting.com. But where do you think your wrestling will match up against a top level D1 wrestler?
Um, I mean, top level, I'm not really sure. I don't really wrestle, consistent, like, every day, like he probably most likely is, obviously. But overall, like from a wrestling standpoint, I mean, I've wrestled some pretty tough dudes, like, in all divisions. Division 1, I've wrestled Division 2 guys. I beat Division 1 guys. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like, I mean, it's MMA, so I feel like whoever kind of knows how to is more well rounded is, is going to win the fight. So,
And let's talk about that. You've been training at Indio Dojo. You mentioned since you basically started training MMA right after ending at Waynesburg in 2019. Of course, there was the pandemic, a lot of stuff. But what's it been like training at Indio Dojo? Got a lot of great wrestlers, got a lot of great jiu-jitsu, and a lot of people at Indio Dojo are pushing into MMA at a very high level. So what's it like getting well-rounded? Because you're absolutely right. This is not a wrestling match come April 15th. This is MMA. There are some restrictions because you're novice, but still there's a lot more going on. So what's it like rounding out your skill set for MMA?
I mean, it's been good. I mean, I've, just kind of trying to balance everything out. I mean, obviously more wrestling dominant, but I mean, I've been working on my striking pretty much, if not more than my more than my wrestling, because I mean, I'm not going to forget how to wrestle, and just trying to mold everything together so that way I, can try to be the best I can be when it comes to MMA. But I'm just, just taking a day at a time, doing what I can, and I'm just enjoying the ride while it's here.
Great words. I mean, you've got a lot of excitement behind you. You're training at a very good gym with a lot of great coaches and fellow fighters and all of that. You bring an intensity. I've known you back when you were a college student. You're always a great wrestler, but you're also a very intense wrestler. I remember people saying your technique was good, but it was also your ferociousness, the fact that you had an intensity. I think wrestling is intense, but you kind of bring a level even on top of that intensity. When did you first start thinking that MMA and fighting, which has sort of bigger skill sets than being limited into the rules of wrestling, when did you first start learning about MMA or thinking, hey, I've got the mindset and the skills to make MMA successful?
I mean, I started watching MMA back, when Royce Gracie was in the UFC. I was just, watching it here and there when I was a kid. On and Growing up, I did, different things. I did like karate growing up. I mean, that was more like for like sport and discipline type thing. But I mean, I actually had a couple fights when I was in the Army. So, I mean, I've always been, I've always enjoyed MMA and I've thought about going into it. But I don't think I really fully pursued it up until yeah, like I said, when I left Waynesburg, and it was just like a turn of events that kind of happened, and I just was like, yeah, I should probably, do this if it's something that I, been wanting to do, rather than just, let's say 20 years down the line thinking of like, what if I did it and where could I have been? So I'd rather, do it, see where I can go. I'm just trying to get to see what level I can go to. Like, that's why I'm just enjoying, the ride, because I mean, I don't really know my full potential, honestly, because there's just been like a lot of stuff, throughout life. Life happens. So I've just been trying to, focus and do things here at Indio, and it's been a real nice. I've learned a lot. Danilo, the Muay Thai coaches, Coach Mikey, Uncle Jeff, like they've been teaching me a lot of stuff, and it's like it's been real good. Met some great people along the way, and yeah, I'm just enjoying, like I said, enjoying the ride while I can.
I love that. I love that mindset. Somebody like you that has a lot of physical gifts and skills. You're putting your effort out. You're training hard, and it sounds like it's less about sort of a certain accomplishment and more about, like you said, seeing what level you could compete at. And I think from everything I've seen and heard, people are very excited to see what that ends up being, with your focus and your intensity and getting around a great gym. I'm excited to see. It's also exciting for your opponent, James Lledo, who also has sort of that, that focus and that intensity. You mentioned wanting to compete against somebody who's also taking this seriously, and you're not going after somebody who's maybe quote unquote an easy win. What would you like to see out of yourself? This could be a prediction for the fight April 15th, or more just like a like an internal self goal that you have, whether it's performance based or not. What would you like to see out of yourself for April 15th?
I mean, for myself, I just want to, for this fight, just, pushing myself. I know the last fight, it was kind of like, in my opinion, it was more of a lackluster performance just because it was kind of short notice and my head kind of wasn't fully there because I had gotten like potential fights
Yeah.
for a couple months, and then it kind of like nothing was going through. So mentally, I just was like, and whatever, I'll take a break, and then just like I lost the focus, and then they contacted me with the filling in for the I forget the guy's name, but I mean
You fought
but I am
you
grateful. I
fought
think
Jason Milnix.
it's okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, shout out to him though. I mean,
Yeah.
he still took the fight knowing, I was, I guess, an accomplished wrestler or whatever, and he didn't necessarily have wrestling.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I always appreciate, someone getting in there because, I mean, just getting in there in general is a task in itself, and, you know, with another human being fighting. So, not many people really want to do that, but I do appreciate that part. And, yeah, that's why this fight I'm really looking forward to because it pretty much was secured already, and just knowing that it's against another wrestler, like you said, like the toughness and just like the just how wrestlers are. Like I have hopes. Like I'm confident that he's not going to pull out because I mean,
Mhm.
like why would he? This is the mindset we have. Like we're not going to back down from nothing.
Yeah, you're sharing very openly about how, and I've seen it when I was running Pursuit MMA outside of Philadelphia for a few years. It's hard, particularly at the amateur level, where fights are never really guaranteed. Like you said, there's rumors of fights, there's matches that fall through, and I've seen a lot of fighters struggle, like you were saying, where you're doing the grind, you're working really hard, but then that date that you were planning for goes and comes without a fight. So I think it makes perfect sense that it was a little hard for you to be as dialed in as you needed to be for your debut, even though you had a really good outcome. And it's always respectful to see your appreciation for your opponent. I think it was somebody at the UFC said that MMA wouldn't happen without an opponent, right? No matter, you've got to have an opponent to fight, or else there's no MMA. You're just shadow boxing. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. You also bring up a great point and that's, I always give credit for 247 Fighting Championships and their matchmaker, their owner Ryan Middleton, their matchmaker Jim Mooney, because to your point, once it's set, you can really get dialed in. And once you know your opponent's going to show up because he's an accomplished athlete, you're an accomplished athlete, the venue is going to be incredible. I've seen some issues where promoters don't do their homework and the venue gets canceled last minute or something else goes wrong. And so you can kind of guarantee that as long as both parties stay healthy, that this is going to be a big time fight. If we could, since we've really talked about April 15th, Rawlenberg 16, I want people to get tickets from you or from Indio Dojo or online at 247fighting.com. And then if you do buy online, make sure you give Ken Burrs credit. If we could just back up, you mentioned that you fought in the military. So first, thanks for your service. I remember that you're an Army vet, but quick question on that. Was that Army Combatives? I know the Army does boxing, the Army does a bunch of different things. What rule set was that in the Army?
Well, it was a combatives tournament, but they kind of how it was run. It was a little different than just strict combatives. So so until the semifinals, it was pretty much just jujitsu.
Hmm.
So we would wear our uniforms, and then they'll put a belt on us. So it's like wearing a gi
Yeah.
and just jujitsu rules. So the and if once you make it to the semis, it's jujitsu with they throw the shin guards on, and you can do kicks to wherever, knees, open hand slaps, and punches to the body,
Hmm.
and well, like close fist punches and stuff. And then the finals was MMA.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was like the full set. I think there were like Ohio rules, so
okay.
there was ground and pound, but there's just no elbows.
Yeah,
So
that's
there,
Ohio rules. Yeah, there Ohio rules for amateurs are a bit wider in the sense that you have ground and pound, but without elbows. So that really, and that's cool. Thank you for explaining that because I've seen Army combatives, and I've seen it at the training level where it's not really trying to beat the other person; it's more technique. The
yeah,
tournament is a very unique thing. So, how many fights did you end up doing, and what was the outcome of that? What was it like? Because at the end, it sounds like that was a full out amateur MMA fight. It's just that it
yeah,
obviously took place within the military.
yeah. It was. I so I did it 2 years. So I did it 2014, and then I did it in 2016, right before I got out to go to Waynesburg and wrestle. And I won the tournament both those years, and so I think my first year, I think I had probably like five
Mhm.
opponents maybe. So yeah, going up to the to the semis, I had three, and then the semis match, and then finals, and then the next year probably like the same, like five. So yeah, that was actually it was enjoy because the way that my unit, well, I was in the 82nd Airborne Division,
Sure.
and the way they do it is they have this thing we call it a All American Week, and it's pretty much where you do like all the soldiers do sports throughout the week, and then we have like a in the division we have a run, so we'll do the run and all that. So obviously I pick combatives. They have like flag football, like basketball, other
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I did the combatives. I won those 2 years by TKO first round both years. So it was a good experience. And that was like kind of like my thing where, oh yeah, I think I kind of like this. And yeah.
That is cool. Now, in the military, does that come with some certificate or like belt or medal, or is it literally just sort of good job because there's no real like um, award given when you win a combatives tournament?
Um the first year the first year was it was a medal and a trophy.
Hmm.
And I think the second year was kind of just a medal.
Cool.
So
Well, this kind of brings it all. This kind of brings it all full circle because you talked about obviously. I had asked you when did you first start considering MMA. You mentioned having watched Hoist Gracie back, back in the day, the UFC tournaments. It's kind of cool that your first foray into mixed, like real mixed martial arts, is more than one rule set. People like we've codified mixed martial arts in what we see as MMA, UFC, but even if it's two disciplines mixed, that's already a mixed martial arts to some degree. And then you kind of build on it. That's why Sambo, a lot of these guys from the East European bloc are coming out and they're very successful in the UFC. Sambo is different, but it's a mixed martial arts because it involves multiple disciplines. So it's kind of cool that your first foray were tournaments because original UFC and other big MMA organizations were always tournament style. So that's kind of cool that your first foray after knowing Hoist Gracie, after watching him, was in a similar situation where you don't know who your opponent's going to be, and you similar to wrestling. Um, if there's one thing, I guess to end on is kind of a nice thing. Do you like having one opponent to prepare, like we've been talking about your opponent James Lledo, or do you like the tournaments of wrestling or Army Combatives where you're not guaranteed to know who to prepare for because it depends on who they beat?
Um, I mean, I don't know really. I mean, I'm just used to the whole, wrestling, like, wrestling in tournaments and stuff. So like, you kind of just wrestle whoever you get or go against whoever you get. I mean, it is nice having one opponent and just, kind of focusing on that. But I guess that's kind of, you can kind of look at it like that, and like when you're wrestling dual meets in a way, like who you're going to wrestle. I mean, typically, at least. I mean, that's not always the case, but overall. But I mean, yeah, it's. I definitely think it's definitely nice to have one focus on one person rather than just wrestling a whole tournament and stuff. Because I mean, obviously, end of a tournament, you're like so tired, and it's just I don't even know. It's hard to explain other than it kind of sucks, but I don't know. Keep doing it for some reason.
Sure. Well, it's been great. I've talked to you outside of MMA Fancast quite a bit, but this is really cool to have you on the show. So thanks for coming on for the first time. You're super exciting of a fighter. You've got a lot of people watching you and excited to see you and your opponent, James Lledo, in the build up to this fight. A big fight between two really important 185ers up and coming. There haven't been a lot of fights announced for 247 Brawl in the Berg 16, but the fights that have been announced, yours included, and the pro title with the reigning defending 145-pound champ Ethan the Wolverine Goss. It's already a card that's going to sell out, even with the 2 or 3 fights they've announced. So you need to get your tickets now. I know it just sounds like I'm pushing tickets, but that venue is incredible. That tent, under the tent, you've already fought there at the casino. It's super exciting, super loud. It's got a great atmosphere. April 15th is going to be absolutely incredible. I appreciate you coming on the show. You've been listening to Luke Payson for MMA Fancast with first-time guest, hopefully first of many, Ken Burrs. Thanks so much for taking your time to come on.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Take care. Best skills to you April 15th.
All right. See you. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.